Hey, everybody, welcome to the Chris and Dan Show. Today we have a special guest for you, Dr. Varma. Uh, Dr. Varma, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you would like to speak on today?
Hey, Chris. Nice to meet you. I'm Yug. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Phyla, where we're changing the way we approach acne, amongst other diseases. And my background is I'm a scientist. I have a background in biology and biochemistry. I got my PhD at Johns Hopkins, and then I was a postdoc at UCSF studying the microbiome. So I've been studying the microbiome for about 12 years now. And it's a very young field. It's less than 20 years old. So it's been just amazing to be at the forefront of this research, see all the amazing innovation that's come out and the technologies that have spun out of it. Um, and fundamentally, my company and our approach towards acne and other conditions as well is to look at the microbiome, see what's going on, and fix that imbalance or balance, as it were, instead of going whole hog and just kind of nuking everything on the skin or just wiping everything out. So ours is a more sophisticated, elegant approach. Would love to talk about the trials we've done and how we've kind of figured out, elucidated the mechanisms of what we're doing as well.
That sounds great. And matter of fact, I'm going to start with a personal issue, and hopefully you don't mind here. It'll give you an opportunity to discuss what you're doing trial wise.
We'll
Um,
we'll we'll just give everyone a quick disclaimer. This is not intended to be medical treatment.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's funny. I've been complaining to my wife. I'm 50. What am I? 52, and I haven't had any problems with acne in years. And in the last 2 weeks, I've been having great issues with acne, lots of pimples.
Okay.
So I've been complaining to her about this, and I was like, I don't think I've changed anything other than, like Dan, I've kind of developed a cheat day. I'm not on keto or anything, but just I try to limit sugar to 1 day a week. But I'm doing
Okay.
a lot of sugar on that 1 day a week. Could that have anything to do with it? I know that directly probably does something to your biome, right?
hmm
Um, but does the amount in 1 day, does that do something? Is it maybe I've been exercising more, so I'm a little dirtier? I take showers when I'm done, but I mean,
Chris,
what
take
would
a
be your
shower
guess?
every now and then.
What would be your guess? And our audience would love to know the answer to this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my best educated guess because, as without doing a clinical follow up or looking at some biomarkers, it's difficult
Absolutely.
to validate. But acne is a complex disease, right? We know this. It's affected by diet and stress and genetics and hormones. And one of the things that let's talk about diet, how that affects acne. All of these are actually secondary causes. So the primary cause of acne, what's driving acne, for the most part, is the overgrowth of this one bacterium called C. acnes or Cutibacterium acnes. Now, this bacteria is on your face, Chris, your face, Dan, my face, the face of every adult who's listening to this podcast. But obviously, we all don't have acne.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Quick question there.
Right.
So generally speaking, teenagers have more of an issue with acne. Is there more of this bacteria on their face?
Generally, yes. Specifically, not necessarily.
Okay.
So, if we wind back to pre-puberty, kids just don't have acne. The incidence is basically zero, right? And
Hmm.
that's because they do not have C. acnes in any substantial level on their skin.
Okay.
When you hit puberty, you have all these hormonal changes. Your skin kind of totally changes. Your pores deepen. Your sebaceous glands activate, which is just really the pivotal sort of occurrence here. And when that happens, your skin starts to produce oil, and this is triggered by your hormonal changes. This oil is food almost exclusively for this organism that has been very uniquely adapted to kind of eat this oil and exist on your skin. And this organism actually does a lot of good for your skin. So C. acnes protects your skin from other harmful bacteria, makes it more acidic, makes it sort of dry. And like I said, every adult has it on their skin. But the problem arises when it overgrows, right? And goes out of balance. So it's not a bacteria that's like oh, it's always bad. You kill it wherever you find it, wipe it out. No, it has a good sort of role to play in your skin microbiome. It's just when it overgrows is when it's the problem. So when does it overgrow? When you have something in your diet that triggers your body to produce more oil, right? And for different people, it's different triggers. For some people, it's pizza. For some people, it's oily food. For some people, it's spicy food or chocolate or milk or whatever, right?
Mm.
But when you are eating a trigger food for your own body, your body's reacting by producing a little more oil, and the bacteria sees that, overgrows, and your immune system is now saying,
So, sorry to interrupt again.
Mhm.
Now, generally speaking, I believe after the age of 45 or somewhere in that realm, adults pretty much stop producing oil for their skin. Um, and does that get reactivated by these trigger foods, or how does that work?
So
And,
you never completely stop producing oil, which is a good thing because the oil is very useful and necessary. So it's necessary to hydrate your skin, keep it moist, keep those layers of skin well hydrated, and also helps to prevent fine lines and wrinkles and prevents aging. So a lot of people think getting rid of your acne means drying out your skin. And okay, when you're young, you're resilient, your skin is bouncy, you don't see much of an effect. But 10 years from then, right? When you've depleted all this sebum from your skin starts to look a lot older. And as you said, as you get older, the amount of sebum your skin produces, is actually getting lower and lower, and that's one of the reasons why people tend not to have acne. The other one that we actually found out recently is actually quite fascinating and is the basis of our technology.
okay.
It's this dermatology stuff is fascinating on many levels. Prior to moving to Yuma, Arizona to do
Hmm.
research here, I haven't done derm. And actually, Chris, we have opportunity in San Bernardino as well with Dr. Z, even though he's not a dermatologist, he's basically a subspecialist of derm.
Yep.
Hmm.
There's so many conditions like eosinophils is one. This morning, 7:30 a.m., we had somebody coming in, atopic derm. PI starts talking about eosinophil count. Do you
Hmm.
notice anything with eosinophils and acne, or is that kind of what differentiates acne from atopic derm and psoriasis and more of the autoimmune, or is acne autoimmune as well?
Acne is not autoimmune, and it is basically an inflammatory disorder, which is what a lot of these other disorders are too, including atopic derm and psoriasis. The triggers of acne are very specific, and so, for example, there's been, or a couple of years ago, there was this huge uptick in people thinking, "Oh, do I have fungal acne?" Okay, fungal acne is a thing. It's very rare. It has some unique symptoms. For example, you have really itchy skin, like unbearably itchy skin, which doesn't happen with acne. So if you have that, then go to a doctor and get that diagnosed. But fungal acne is not actually acne. It's a type of dermatitis because acne vulgaris is by definition caused by C. acnes. If it's caused by another bacterium like Staph aureus or a fungus or whatever, it's technically dermatitis. Um, and when you have atopy, associated with then you have AD or atopic dermatitis, subset of which is eczema, which is another huge concern. But slight difference, but obviously major difference in the way you diagnose it. Of course, also treat it. And if people think that they have like a funky kind of acne that's kind of like acne but not really, then they may not have acne, but they should get that checked out with their doctor.
I
So,
see.
you were about to tell us a little bit about your trial. So, can we expect a cure anytime soon for acne? Teenagers would love this, and some adults too.
Yeah. So, like I said, acne is a very complicated disease. Whether it's diet or hormones or stress, when you sweat more, you produce more oil, or genetics. The root cause is if the amount of sebum, which is the food for this bacteria, changes on your skin, then you might have a problem. And again, this is going out of balance and bringing things back into balance, right? Not complete eradication.
And again,
Um,
it's one of
so
the it's one of those triggers that increases the sebum.
right, the sebum, the oil that your body naturally produces on the skin.
Okay.
Um, so it's the way I put it is, let's say you go out to your garden one day, and you find a weed. What are you going to do? Are you going to pull out a can of gasoline, sprinkle it all over your lawn, and set your garden on fire just to get rid of that one weed?
That
Of
would
course
work.
not.
Would work.
Well, yeah, but with the price of gas now, I mean, you don't want to take
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
but that's what we're doing. We're setting fire to our microbiome when we use these products, because all of these products are antibacterial in nature. The benzoyl peroxides, the antibiotics, the retinoids that we take for acne right now, but they're killing the good and the bad bacteria because they can't distinguish between the two. As a result, they're turning this protective layer, this rainforest worth of diversity on your skin into a desert, and the effects go far beyond sort of the side effects like redness, dryness, inflammation. Because you're depleting this protective layer, you're reducing the microbiome's ability to be a buffer against C. acnes overgrowth, and as a result, acne relapses are a very common sort of part of having acne treatments. So what if, just like with your weed, right, going back to your lawn, you look down at it, you scoop it out, you replace it with dirt or a patch of grass or something, and you're done, right? That's what you would do. Well, Phyla has developed a technology that does just that. We kill only the bad bacteria. We control its population without hurting the good bacteria. And we do this using a naturally occurring organism called phages or bacteriophages. Now, bacteriophages are all around us. They're tiny, harmless viruses that don't really interact with the human body, but they're the world's best killer of bacteria. So they're the nature's best defense against bacteria. And billions of phages pass harmlessly through us every day. But what's really interesting is if you look at the skin, then the phages that kill acne, C. acnes, live on skin, but they don't live on everyone's skin. You're far more likely to find this phage on healthy skin than you are on people with acne. And so this was a great paper out of 2016. They also found that as you get older, the amount of this phage on your skin explodes. It's hugely higher. And so the hypothesis is that we all know that acne is a young person's disease, but as you get older, you just it just gradually disappears. We don't exactly know why. The prevalence of phages may be a part of the solution or the part of the explanation why. And the explanation is that as you go through life, you just kind of through random encounters have an opportunity to have that phage hop on your skin, and then it just lives on your skin and balances your microbiome. So, we all have these annoying friends who don't take a shower, eat whatever they want, just come in looking amazing, have glowing skin. Chances are they have this bug on this phage on them that's naturally calibrating their microbiome. And we thought we'd democratize this, put it in a bottle, and have it for everyone to sort of experience.
So, what phase of testing are you in terms of what's is it a bacteria? What is a
Bacteriophage, yeah.
So it's a bacteriophage,
okay?
and a bacteriophage is a small virus that specifically kills bacteria and nothing else.
Okay,
Um,
so
in terms of the stage that we're at, we started off doing some pretty extensive safety work to make sure that this product was really safe. And of course, it's buttressed by the fact that not only are these phages, we find them on our people's skin, right? So we get them from skin, and not only are they a constant part of your microbiome, but they're actually highly associated with healthy skin. So that gives us our first clue as to they're very safe. We ran a clinical trial to, really look into what the effect of phages would be on the skin microbiome in the context of acne. And we asked ourselves 4 questions. And so just to kind of set the table for this trial, and I'm sure your listeners will appreciate this, we ran a placebo-controlled double-blinded study. And so I don't know if I should explain what double-blinded is. Your listeners may already
Yeah,
know.
well, let's dumb it down a little.
So double-blinded basically means, we have our uh, so placebo basically means someone's getting a sham product, a product without the active ingredient in it, just to see what the baseline is, right? Set a baseline, and then also try to cut out the bias that people have. Because for some people, just taking a medicine, popping a pill, taking an injection, putting something on your face, psychologically or through the mind kind of exerts an effect. So you want to
Better known as the placebo effect.
exactly the placebo effect, which I think most people are familiar with. So we have the placebo product, which doesn't have the active ingredient, and the phage product, which has the phages, the active ingredient in it. And double blinded means we have someone else mark which bottles are phage and which bottles are placebo. So we don't know. We then send that over to the people who are running the trial, and they don't know which bottle is which. They just have numbers on bottles, and they just give it to people with acne, their cohort. And so it's completely randomized. It's double blinded because neither the operator of the trial nor the sponsor, which is us, knows. And then we have the kind of unblinding later on when we're analyzing the data, where we kind of track, who got what bottle, and then we analyze the data. So it's a gold standard in clinical trials. It's from our scientific position how we wanted to do it. We enrolled 90 subjects in there so that we could get power for the trial. I'm not gonna explain what power is, but essentially you want a large enough number of people to make sure that whatever signal you're getting is above a level of significance.
So is this a phase 1/2 or phase 2 study?
This was more of a consumer study, but it was run kind of in the framework of how an FDA trial would be conducted.
Okay.
So you didn't have to submit this to the FDA, correct?
No, that's correct. So our product is an OTC acne drug product, and so there's a monograph that is associated with acne. And so for all over-the-counter acne products, you can mention that it treats acne on the label if you satisfy certain labeling requirements, and then you've done obviously the kind of product development and testing in a certain way.
Okay.
And so that's the path we chose, because obviously this is a new technology. We wanted to get this in the market and really show the industry that we can build a product using this technology that is, miles better than everything else, that people love, that people will pay for. Because when they get it in their hands, they'll say, wow, this works really well for acne. I wonder if they have something for eczema. Because, we're on our way building that product too.
Absolutely. So, of those 90 subjects in the trial, were there any safety concerns? And I can't imagine they were a real concern, but dizziness, diarrhea, anything like that?
So we had 4 questions that we asked. Number 1 was safety, right? As
Mhm.
you asked, is this product safe? What is the safety profile? And it was sort of expected, but it's still nice to see that there was absolutely zero side effects in any patient throughout the trial for the phage serum. And that really is in contrast with everything else. Anyone who's listening to this, who's ever had acne or knows anyone with acne, knows what a pain in the butt it is to use these acne products, because they cause redness, dryness, inflammation. With retinoids, it's blood, sort of liver damage, birth defects, risk of depression and suicide. I mean, this is
I,
seriously strong stuff that people are taking.
I would add one other issue. When I was a teenager, young 20s, I had acne, and it also just destroyed clothing. It was a cream you had to put on, and if it touched your clothes, completely bleached it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was the biggest concern for me at the time. None of those other things. It was just destroying my clothes. But yeah, continue, please.
Yeah. And so to see that safety profile was amazing, because, I'd argue that So a lot of our customers come to us having tried everything under the sun because we are new. We're about 2 years in the market, and we didn't exist as a solution for a lot of our customers. They come to us having bombed, nuked, obliterated their skin in the quest for clear skin, and they're frustrated because they still don't have it. We fix their problem, and from my point of view, we should be everyone's first choice, not their last choice, and we're working towards that, right? Because if we don't work for you, right, and we work for most of our customers, but even if we don't work for you, worst case scenario, at least you haven't destroyed your skin in your quest for getting rid of acne. With everything else, it's just so difficult to reconcile the damage that you've done with your skin, especially down the line, that it really becomes a struggle for people to get over that hump.
So what's the application? Is it a pill? Is it a cream?
It's a topical serum, so you just apply it to your skin, your face twice a day. And we have people using it for their upper chest, upper back, where they have acne. It works just as well. It works for all kinds of acne: cystic acne, mild, moderate, severe, hormonal acne. They all have the same cause, and so
Okay.
it's always a solution.
Is it apply as needed, or is it a continual use?
Some of our customers use it as needed. We stress continual use because it's really important to calibrate your microbiome and keep it in that balanced state. For whatever reason, people with acne have more trouble regulating that balance than people with healthy skin, and it shows, right? Because you have acne. And so what the phage serum will do, because it's this really cool, unique living organism, it will sort of dynamically recalibrate your microbiome. In other words, if there isn't a lot of C. acnes on your face and your microbiome is in balance, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't touch anything, it just kind of disappears. It
So
hydrates
what?
your skin, you're fine.
So what kills this phage? And not enough bacterial food.
Yep. The
Okay.
phage
So what?
needs food, bacteria are the food. If the bacteria aren't around, the phage will just disappear.
But
Okay.
this bacteriophage that you put in a bottle, basically,
hmm
it occurs naturally as well in nature.
Yep. In fact, that's
So
where we isolated our phage from healthy skin. So
I see.
So taking a guess, Dan, this would be my guess. It sounds like so. You have this bacteria, and it's triggered by something that you do, right? Whether it's something you eat in your microbiome or exercise, or whatever the case may be. So you have this bacteria, then you have the phage, kills all the bacteria, but then you get another trigger, and back it is again. So if you don't want to have acne, use this phage, figure out what your trigger is, and don't trigger it any longer, right? Then you don't need the phage anymore. But most people
well,
are not going to either figure out what their trigger is or not going to care, right? I would assume. Does that seem accurate, doctor?
well, the interesting thing is, if you control the bacterial population, it doesn't matter how oily your skin is, because you're controlling the root cause of acne. And so if the secondary cause exists, but the root cause is under control, then you're fine.
Right.
You don't have acne and you don't need to worry. Because a lot of people obsess about this. And for some people, legitimately, their body is very sensitive and acute to their trigger food. And so even a little bit of, dairy or chocolate or whatever, spicy food, oily food, will set them off. But if their microbiome is well balanced and that bad bacteria is under control to the point that it's never overgrowing, the oil is not a trigger for acne. The oil just feeds the trigger. If you keep the trigger under control using phages or some other mean, then you basically solve the problem. You don't have to give up your favorite food. You don't have to sort of tiptoe around social events and friends and spend a
hmm
ton of time thinking about what am I eating, what am I not eating. Keep this separate because you have a life to live. You go live it. Acne gets in the way. We just want to get rid of that for you.
So I'm curious, is dirt a trigger? Because I know over time, it's been mentioned to me and others, you just don't shower enough, or whatever the case might be. Is dirty skin a trigger?
Hygiene is certainly something that if you improve your hygiene, it does help a little bit, and that's really because your reducing the levels of bacteria on your skin. Overwashing is not the solution though, because that causes its own set of problems.
More dry
Um,
skin, right?
yeah, and so like with teenagers, especially with boys, a lot of the time the acne immediately starts improving when they just start washing their face regularly. But again, it only takes you so far because mechanical sort of removal of bacteria is it works up to a point.
Hmm.
And going back to kind of the balance issue, right? If you have a microbiome that's out of balance and you wash your face, it's going to bring down bacterial levels roughly equally across all bacteria. You're still not addressing that imbalance. So you
Right.
need to, you know, recalibrate the microbiome, and that's really the only long-term way to deal with this.
Okay.
So does this, since it's a topical, right? It's a cream.
Yeah.
I mean, it penetrates the skin. I'm assuming the C. acne bacteria are there.
Hmm.
But let's say somebody who doesn't have acne, they don't need this. Their microbiome is sending basically the same bacteriophage or something that creates a similar property, because a bacteriophage just basically replicates itself until the bacteria burst, right? Like there's
Yep.
no special protein or anything they're actually putting in there. So how does it work, like in somebody who, like, how does the microbiome actually take care of this in somebody who's not using the product?
Are you asking how kind of phages work in nature, or how does the our product work on healthy skin?
How phages work in nature, because let's say somebody doesn't need the product, right? Because they don't have acne. So somehow their microbiome, without using a bacteriophage, is
Balanced.
keeping the C. acne from overgrowth, right? So,
Right.
like, what is that protein? Because it's not a bacteriophage, right? Like, they're not sending bacteriophage to the C. acne. So, what are they actually? How are they keeping that under control? I guess.
Yeah, so there's kind of two factors at play to answer your question. The first is that, as I said, people with healthy skin carry these phages far more often than people with acne.
Ah, the
So,
same phage.
yep, that's
Ah,
in fact that's where we found this phage. We found a bunch of this phage from taking samples of people with healthy
I
skin.
gotcha. Okay, okay.
And so, all those friends of ours who have perfect skin, chances are they have this phage in abundance on their skin, and it's keeping that garden, really
Hmm.
well trimmed and under control. Um, and we want everyone to have this, not just someone with an accident of fortune. The second observation is that everyone's immune system is sort of set at a different thermostat. And this is really largely an interplay and interaction of where you were born, how you were born, the things you ate, how you grew up, the people around you, the things around you, how you experience pre-puberty, etc. And so your skin is unique, your body's response is unique. So for example, Dan, let's say you and I have 70% C acnes on our face, right? And I have acne and you don't. Well, it could be that the reason is because my threshold is at 60%, right? And so if C acnes goes above 60%, I break out. And so I'm at 70, so I'm in trouble. Whereas your thermostat is set at 80%. So you can tolerate C acnes that grows up to about 80%. And so if
Mm,
since you're at 70, you're below the threshold. And so your microbiome is still in relative balance and you're not seeing that inflammation.
see,
So, and
nature
this
is
is a
not
hard,
fair.
yeah,
Nature is not socialist.
exactly. And it's a hard thing to kind of say because everyone's like, oh, what's my balance? What's my level? Am I above or below it? Can I measure it? I'm like, well, we don't have kind of the tools to measure every single person's. We do know this on sort of a lab level. But it's also difficult because I'm sure as you age, and not enough research has gone into this, but as you age, the different things in your life are different, your thermostat probably changes a little bit
Your
too.
thermostat.
And
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's due to probably all kinds of autoimmune triggers you may be having that may be killing the good bacteria that's
Mhm.
causing the. But still, how do you get the bacteria, the natural bacteriophage? Do your microbiome produce it?
No, it's just an organism that's part of your microbiome. Just like you have bacteria that, are part of
Ah,
your
okay.
body. A
I see.
bacteriophage is just like an organism that floats around and
I
exists in the
see. I
world.
see. So they haven't figured out, like, or maybe have you looked into it, like what creates these good bacteriophages? Like, is it more kombucha, or like what kills it? Is it too much coffee? Has anyone researched it? If anyone, it must be you.
Yeah, that's what we're learning more and more. That we're at the forefront of this research. So these bacteriophages, they're like I said, their food is bacteria, and so when their food runs out, when they've killed everything that they can find, they tend to just kind of disappear slowly. One mystery is what we've noticed, and again, this is understudied. We're in the process of studying this. Um, if you apply the phage to a person with acne and they stop using our product, the phage doesn't persist. It's a living organism. It should, but it doesn't. And we call this engraftment, right? So does it engraft? Does it just stick around on your skin for a long time after you stop using it? For whatever reason, and we don't know if there are extrinsic or intrinsic factors responsible for this, but we find that these phages just fall off people's skin who have acne. And we've seen this from our customers. They'll say, "Oh, I went for a weekend trip and I forgot my phyla serum and I started breaking out." So got back on Monday or Tuesday, started using it religiously, and in a week, my skin was back under control. Um, we're trying to study what factors are involved, and we also don't know. Again, we launched just a couple of years ago, so we're still studying this. We also don't know for what length of time can you take this phage and it then stably engrafts on your skin. It could be a month for some people, 6 months, a year, several years. But acne is a chronic disease. You get it for years and years and years, right? And so you need a product like this that consistently keeps your microbiome in balance, in check.
There you go, Chris.
So being that it's that lengthy of time for some people, I would assume from your 90 participant trial that for many this didn't work because it wasn't consumed long enough or used long enough.
Yeah, so what we see is we see a significant result in the eight. So it was an 8-week trial, 2 months, which
Hmm.
actually isn't that long of a time. A lot of acne trials are 3 months, but we saw a significant signal in 2 months, in 8 weeks.
What per,
And
prox,
undoubtedly, if
approximately what percentage of people? So you had 90 people, 50%, 75%.
it was about 35%, which is actually seems
Okay.
very low, but it's actually in line with benzoyl peroxide. Antibiotics are all about 30% response rate.
Okay.
So, I mean, going back to the trial, right? We asked ourselves 4 questions. The first was safety. The second was, we know that the phage kills C. acnes amazingly well in a test tube. Can it do that on the skin, right? So, is it
Hmm.
hitting its target? In other words. So once we figured out it hit, and the answer to that was yes. In the phage group versus the placebo, we're seeing a statistically significant reduction in C. acnes from the beginning of the trial to the end of the trial, right? Which is what you
Hmm.
want to see.
Hmm.
The third question that we asked was, okay, it's hitting the target, but is it really achieving its goal? In other words, if it's killing C. acnes, is it improving people's acne? And again, we found that statistically significantly, with a p-value of 0.0041, the phage group had a significant reduction in acne compared to the placebo group. And so that was really kind of
See,
the for all the marbles.
I
Sure.
wanna I wanna come back to the study design. I think I'll make a smaller video,
Hmm.
just for that. But let's get into like your career, because let's segue if we can. Because how does somebody even start with this? Like, what makes you so interested to look into acne? Like, you had to like go on a deep dive, right?
Hmm.
Like, most people are not that interested unless they're a dermatologist. I mean, what is a guy from John Hopkins and UC San Francisco like? Why even bother? What's your why? Like, why did you do
Mhm.
this?
So I'm fundamentally passionate about the phage technology that underpins our company. I've been studying it or following it for about 16 years now.
Mm.
And when I first heard of it, my question was, why isn't this a thing? Because phage therapy or bacteriophage therapy has been known for over 100 years. It's one of the oldest form of kind of sophisticated biotechnology that we know of. It has a fascinating scientific history that was influenced by two world wars, a lot of the political kind of upheaval of the 20th century. And all of that to come to the point where in the West it is largely unknown. And I thought, okay, this technology has its advantages and disadvantages, but it is something that could make a big difference in people's lives. So throughout my graduate studies, throughout my academic work, I would always look out for not just the scientific progress on pages, but also what companies were doing with it, right? How are they using the technology? What indications are they kind of attacking, and why do they succeed and fail? And so when it was my turn to start this company, I promised myself that I would learn from their mistakes, right? It would be a terrible thing to make the same mistake twice. And so that led us to Acne, which kind of fit the profile of the perfect sort of problem that a solution like Phage could solve. And kind of there are many technical sort of criteria there. There are a couple of business kind of model criteria there as well, which are really important. But fundamentally, acne affects almost everyone, and so many people struggle through it. A quarter of people with acne have permanent scarring. Uh, if you have acne, you have a 63% higher chance of depression and mental health than if you don't have acne. And if you can imagine, almost all teenagers get it. That is a very high number, and that's kind of a scary number. So for me, it was kind of a combination of being passionate about phage therapy, finding this amazing sort of example or use case to apply it to, and then the huge unmet need.
So let's go way back, okay? Where you grew up, why you chose your field that you chose. Um, let's start with that because maybe now we could switch to the motivational, inspirational part of the. We're done nerding out, but we'll come back to nerding out to wrap up, and then we'll do something very special to wrap up. But we can't tell you what it is.
All
Sword into
right.
secrecy. Sword into secrecy by Saber.
Mm.
He will execute me
Wow.
if I deviate from this. Yeah, sorry, Chris. Sorry to put you out there. By the way, Chris, you and I wouldn't qualify for the study. It was only for 18 to 35-year-olds. Or 15 to 35, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
12 to 35. Yeah.
12 to 35, okay. I
Mm.
want to get back to study design because there's a lot of things like I want to pick your brain on. But who are you, Dr. Varma? Before you were Dr. Varma, who are you as
Yeah.
just you?
So I was born in India, and born and raised in a small town that's actually the geographical center of India. Um, I actually have a background in chemistry, so I did my undergrad in India, and I also got a master's in organic chemistry. And then I
Wow,
was
love it.
synthesizing all these compounds, and I realized, and we were sending them off to these labs for testing for biological activity. And I realized that I was way more interested in what they were doing than, I mean, I found what I was doing interesting too, but I just was peeking over the fence far too often. And so when I did my PhD at Johns Hopkins, I came over to the US for the first time then, and I've been in the US ever
Oh,
since.
so you came on a student visa.
Yep,
To see the
exactly.
immigrant hustle, something about the immigrant hustle. Why do you think we're gonna take a little bit left turn? We'll come back. Why do you think that? What do you notice? I guess from kids here in the U.S. right
Mhm.
versus people like you who immigrated like during college. What's the fundamental difference? Because in India, this is a reason why India is an emerging economy, and Chris gonna love this conversation. But in India, I think there's a culture around learning, ambition. Like they prioritize it. I don't know how because it's a
Mhm.
huge country. and we've lost this here in the United States. Do you have quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, just observing kind of a difference in the two countries, having lived there almost for an equal number of time amount of time. I'm coming up on a time when I'll have spent more time in the U.S. than in India, which kind of blows my mind. Um, but I feel like in India, there's definitely a culture of education is what will get you ahead, right? So, for example, in school, in high school, the most popular kids in school are not the jocks, they are the nerds.
Really?
Yeah, everyone wants to be your friend. Your parents will boast about you to their other parents,
Wow.
to their friends, and yeah, like people are jealous of you. People want to like no, people want to be your friend because they're like, teach me how to study because you get such good grades, and
Wow, this is
want to be.
unbelievable.
And I think again, not to overgeneralize, but broadly, like in Asia, that's not uncommon, right? Whether you're in the Indian subcontinent or in Southeast Asia or China, Japan, Korea, like a lot of emphasis is put like learning is how you get ahead. If you're smart and you apply yourself, then you are kind of the top echelon. You're like top of the food chain. It's
Mm,
not the jocks, it's the nerds that rule the world.
mhm.
And it's funny to me because I think it came full circle in the US where the nerds eventually end up ruling the world. The Bill Gates and the Mark Zuckerbergs. Um,
Elons.
but a- and I think there's also just kind of emphasis more, I guess, on hard work. Not
So
that like it's not like are you lazy or not, but it's just like oh you got good grades not because you were smart, but because you worked hard.
I think I'll summarize for Dr. Barham, at least my opinion. Basically, when you're spoiled, you're generally lazy. And in India, being that it is still a fairly poor country, people need to really work hard to at least put enough food on the table. Where that's just not the case in America. People are just spoiled and have been for many generations. Um, that's the fundamental difference. And
But
that's
isn't
why,
that the natural occurrence? Like in India in 5 decades from now, it'd be interesting to see, are they gonna get spoiled and lazy
yeah,
too?
it's same thing will happen.
Well, will the cricket players in high school be more famous than the scientists?
Possibly, but and as Dr. Verma said, education is key, and nerds rule the world starting in high school.
Mhm.
Um, I,
Is
I
that
s-
still the case right now? Like
I s-
today in India?
I see a tendency of
Oh
that
yeah.
happening here a little bit. Like when I was in high school, it was absolutely the jocks were number one, and the nerds were picked on.
Me too.
Mhm.
But I think that's changing. I honestly think that's changing.
Mm. You think it's
Even
changing for
even
the
here,
better? For
even
the
here.
better.
Yeah, I would say that it is for the better. I mean, we're well past caveman days, right? In which the jocks should be the authority in terms of, strength and abilities determine whether you're going to eat for the day. It's a completely different dynamic now.
And I mean, there's obviously sort of pros and cons to every approach because like in India, for example, if if you were to be successful, quote unquote, and I think my generation was one of the last ones where this was a rigid rule. It was like you had to study to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, um, and even going to business or entrepreneurship was kind of looked down on because they were like, oh well, okay, you're kind of hustling, you're not smart, you just whatever. That has changed completely. So, for example, if you're an artist or if you're a musician, like you had such a hard road to follow, not just because you were struggling to be an artist and be successful and break through the noise, but because like community support was lacking there. And like I was fortunate to be. I'll say that in I come from a well off family in India. I wouldn't categorize myself as kind of the teeming masses, but even in school, I knew it was a struggle. Like as smart as you were, if you didn't work your butt off, like there were people who like there were just so many smart kids around you, and you really had to sort of take your chances where you could get them. And I think that kind of plays into it too, because as an immigrant, you come in and you're just like, where I come from is extremely competitive. I'm here competing against people who've had like way more resources their whole life. And I don't know this new country, this new place. You know, you're still trying to adjust. There's always a bit of a culture shock and always a little bit of that. So you're battling all of these things, a lot of them psychological, some of them kind of, it's personal, right? It's not just an exam you give, it's like your life that you're living. So it's been an interesting experience. I think it definitely builds character, but to me, it's been part of my passion of traveling, going to different parts of the world, understanding different cultures, and just trying to kind of relate that to a universal, concept of humanity.
Hmm.
Interesting. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I've two boys.
And they're growing up here. Were they born here in the U.S.?
Yeah, they're born here in San Francisco, so they're American, but they love Indian food, so they have that strong cultural connection
Well, they're
to
in a good
food.
city for that. You could get good Indian food around there.
Yeah, and whenever we visit back home in India, my kids are just thrilled because they'll just get to eat all the Indian food, and I'm like, okay, that's good. That's something to look forward to.
They get okay. So I was just curious because Chris and I actually debate a lot on this show. Problems with the United States, and I guess what's making us less competitive. And I mean, Chris summarized it well, but you have to dig deeper a little bit than that and see
Well,
why. Why?
right, but I think the biggest differential in our ability to compete with the rest of the world is our failing education system. I was actually watching Abbott Elementary, the hit show, um, and it's a great show. But I actually had to stop halfway through the first episode because I just got furious. Because back in the day, um, our generation, school was supposed to be something that was amazingly well resourced. You had, you had your gym teacher and your science teachers and your English and whatever, and it was a safe place for kids to go and just grow up, right? Have their problems, have their relationships, have their friends, but essentially like a safe place for them to grow up. In Abbott Elementary, what we're saying is our schools have deteriorated to the point where the teachers are struggling. There's no resources for them. They're not supported in any way. They're just unreasonable demands being met for them, put on them, and all of this in an environment where we are raising the next generation of citizens, of voters, of our countrymen, of our neighbors, and and the fact that this has now become a trope, right? That this has become sort of a joke where you just look at it and instead of being concerned, you kind of just laugh at it. It's just
Yeah,
symptomatic of this problem that
we get
um,
laughed at all the time. Our
this is the
audience is
foundation of our
international,
society. This is the foundation of the next generation of our society, and we are messing it up.
and they focus on the wrong thing. I mean, our channel is international. Oftentimes we react to some music clips and from Europe, for example, or from India. We've done India before, and the comments, you can tell they're like, "Oh, these are just two dumb Americans." It is. You're right. The laughing stock is like, "Oh, they're not taught this in school. Like, you can't blame them for being culturally inept." And like, this is kind of like me and Chris get roasted on this, but in a way, like, it's kind of true. Like, our school system prioritizes um not to get too political, but we do occasionally on the show. I mean, do we need to be teaching kids? It's one thing to be open to gay and lesbian and all this stuff, but is school the place for that? Is the argument, And in India, I've never been there, but I doubt that's priority number one in India in the schools.
No, but I will say that I know how gay people and minorities are treated. You don't have to be a gender or sexual minority, even if you're a cultural minority. Things are pretty bad in the sense that there is equal treatment under the law as written, but it's not in spirit, and that's a huge problem. What I will say that one of the things that I'm super impressed by in the American educational system is social emotional learning. Because I feel like up until middle school or even high school, so much of the value of school is just socializing, right? Learning how to get along with people, having friends, having someone who's sitting on your table who you're not maybe great friends with, but you get to know them. Or maybe it's someone you don't like. How do you get along with them, right?
Mm.
Those social skills get so much more important because, as you know, right, where your SAT score, right? Your high school grades, your college grades, it does not matter in real life beyond the next step. What
Right.
matters is, do you get along with people, right? Can you communicate well? Can you form, can you get feedback? Can you grow as a person? And those things I think are done really well, at least as far as I know with my kids' school.
Mm.
And I really appreciate that because I think those are important skills. That they're soft skills, right? You're never going to get like a certificate
Right.
or oh, I graduated first in my class for social, emotional, whatever. But I think
Soft
it's
skills are
good.
important. If we go back to nerding out real quick, otherwise we'll never get off of this podcast. And thank you
Well,
for your time.
sure. I would just like to add one other thing to that. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, but at the same time, when children can't, they're seniors in high school and they can't read and write and do arithmetic at freshman level, let alone senior level, there's other significantly more problems than those soft skills you're referencing. There, there's
100%.
something there's something definitely wrong in the schooling system,
But
and
that's what I'm saying, that we're under-resourced. So we can have both. We don't have to compromise on social
so
emotional for that.
I disagree with that as well, because there's statistics out there that show that there's 3 times as much money being spent now than there was a decade ago. Yet these students are failing at a much higher rate and unable to accomplish the tasks that they were a decade or 20 years ago, with on average much more in the way of money spent in terms of taking inflation into the equation. So I disagree with that. It's not money, it's not resources. There's something else fundamentally wrong with the system. And I don't
That's
think it's
huge.
resources. I think it has nothing to do with resources. I don't know what the problem is, but there's plenty of money being spent. I mean, in California alone, teachers are paid, I think, after 5 years, they're somewhere around 80,000. Not a great salary, but depending on where you live, there's nothing wrong with that for being a teacher. Um, I mean, just across the street from where I'm at, they live in $1 million home. They're both teachers, so they can afford it. That's all they do. It's not a resource problem.
Well, we will not get off this topic, but something we can agree on as we transition. Clunker research, right? There's people. So back to research, and then we got a special thing at the end, Dr. Varma. But okay, the reason I bring this up, it's time to nerd out again. Okay, the reason I bring this up, we have people watching that might be interested in what you've done. Matter of fact, people are watching. They have these ideas. Oftentimes, they're doctors or PhDs, just like yourself. I have this idea. I know I got to do clinical trials. They're amazed. They're stunned. Chris, how many people we talk to on a monthly basis, stunned at even how much a simple trial costs.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I
So
just had this conversation the other day. Somebody couldn't believe what I told them.
I know. So, but here we are talking with Dr. Varma, who's stared into that abyss and still did it. So, why didn't the cost throw you off? Number one. Number two, how did you do it? Like,
Hmm.
just from the beginning, talk about your idea to do it to how you started implementing it. Did you have to talk to the FDA at all? Did you get counsel? How did you decide, okay, we're going over the counter route? Can you just kind of walk us through this? Because a lot of people watching and then they get stuck at that cost. They're like, whoa, this costs a lot. Like, we're just not going to do it. It becomes a good idea. nothing else, right? But
Yeah.
you took it. I mean, yours is commercially like you could buy it on your website right now.
Hmm. Yeah. And so a little bit of background about my company is that our company is actually the startup is called Phi Therapeutics. And so we start off and in many ways are a kind of biotech, kind of pharma focused company. And so initially we were developing this approach as something that would go through the FDA, go through, NDA, BLA pathway. Um, and be approved, probably hundreds of millions of dollars and decades later. Um, for a number of reasons, we decided to go the OTC route, and that has worked out really well for us. It was a great decision that we made at the time. But coming from pharma, I know how much clinical trials cost in pharma, and so looking at kind of the outlay and the bill for a consumer clinical trial, it was, I mean, fractions of pennies on the dollar, right? So
Wait. So I gotta stop you there, Case, because we kind of skimmed over your career. So after Johns Hopkins, UCSF, you went to work for Big Pharma.
no, I started this company, but we were sort of oriented towards big pharma. We started off, we started our development pathway as we were doing bench research and some validation studies. We were like, okay, we need to get some preclinical models. We need to gear up for phase one. We'd even kind of signed up for a type C meeting, that kind of stuff.
I see. So your company, Phi Therapeutics, it was created with going the full clinical trial IND route.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming you had investors early. You secured financing early on in the process, or
So we started off with an NIH grant. We actually have
okay.
had NIH funding to do a lot of this research, and so we started off with that. And we were able to do some good preclinical work there.
How the heck did you get that? And by the way, shout out to NIH. We give them a lot of slack on this channel. But apparently they are investing in worthy causes occasionally, like yours. How long did it take you to secure that? Like from grant application to
About a year and a half, I'd say. Yeah.
did they reject it ever or like send it back like, hey, we need more info or like
We were very lucky. We actually got funded on our first try. So
wow. You
we
wrote it yourself or you hired a grant writer?
no, I wrote it myself. Yeah, I did the
Wow.
research myself and I wrote it myself.
Wow. So before you wrote it, you had to nerd out on this for a few years. Like
Yeah,
Oh
decide.
yeah,
very difficult to write a grant. Just to our audience.
it is. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's very difficult. My academic training surely helped, right? Because I'm used to writing grants, I'm used to writing papers. That's kind of my wheelhouse. But yeah, it's incredible. It's quite difficult. And also I was a postdoc, so I had a day job, and so I would do this nights and weekends, and did the research, wrote the grant, got the funding, did everything else. Um, then did more research with the grant money. Did a few partnerships that kind of helped us with companies that were interested in the skin microbiome to advance our technology, but also help them kind of understand it a bit more.
Wow.
And then we got our first tranche of sort of non-dilute of dilutive funding to take this and keep going with it. But by then we had identified that we were going the over-the-counter route and not the pharma route.
And how did you come to that decision? Like, how did you realize this?
So a couple of different ways, right? A couple of different reasons. The main one was just looking at the model of acne in the U.S. So acne is being insured by obviously you can go to a dermatologist for acne. Acne is the number one condition that all dermatologists see. However, insurers are insuring acne less and less and less. And so more and more people are paying out of pocket, and it's horrible because you're already faced with this hurdle of going to a doctor, then you get a script and you buy this expensive medication and it's coming out of your pocket. As a result, because insurers see acne more as a cosmetic condition, drug companies have all but stopped all of their innovation pipelines for acne. So Gilead's and all these guys who used to be J&J, Merck, who used to have big skincare, but specifically acne programs, acne development programs. They've all but shut down, and they're not even looking for external innovation. And
So
so as
there
a
goes, that's
result,
the answer to our clients who ask, why can't I get acne studies? There you go. Dr. Varma just answered it.
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no money in it for once they find something.
For the payers, no one's going to buy it. They have to pay
Yep,
cash.
yep.
and and so I don't know. This to us was a very clear signal that even if we got through a great phase 2 or even into phase 3 or even if we passed phase 3 and we had this asset that you typically sell at that point and realize all the gains, it wasn't clear to us that there would be an acquirer on the other side of that willing to pick this up. And so when you're sort of on your startup journey and you're building this kind of model to an exit, it's really, really important to kind of get that timing and that exit right. And so then we said, well, okay, we're gonna have to raise how much money, and it's gonna take how much time to even get this through FDA approval before we realize there's no one there. What if we launch this faster and cheaper and just got it into people's hands, right? And then let the market do the talking for us. This option was much better. And then we started looking into it and we said, oh, okay, if we run a consumer clinical trial, it's this much more, cost effective, this much more efficient.
Consumer, what did you call it? Consumer
A consumer
clinical trial?
clinical trial, right?
Gotcha.
So for a consumer product, right, you can run a clinical trial. It's a soap, it's a shampoo, it's a whatever, blah, blah, blah. Most companies who run these kinds of trials will try it out on 10 people, 15 people, 20
I
people is
see.
a lot.
And the model is they charge, the patients pay for, unlike other studies where, like IND studies where patients get paid. I mean, I just came back from the clinic today. We had a screening. We paid them $80.
Mhm.
In a consumer clinical trial, they actually pay for being in it, right?
It depends, right? So you can sort of structure it in many different ways. Obviously, you want to motivate people. So there's advertising costs, there's participant costs, and stuff like that. Um, and so you have flexibility in designing, a lot of that. And so you may or may not reimburse, patients for in-clinic visits, for example, or following up, or compliance, or whatever else you have that's measurable. Um, and so, the way we did it was we wanted to make sure that it was powered, and we actually modeled how we designed and ran the trial on how the FDA runs their trial, and they have a guidance for acne clinical trials. So that's really useful. It's all black and white. We had dermatologists running the trial, and like I said, we did a double-blinded and randomized controlled sort of trial. So um, that was
Randomized double blind. Just to break it down for the people that tuned in just now and now watch the whole thing. You had 90 patients in the study, ages 12 to 35, right?
correct. Men
How
and
many
women.
sites, men and women, how many sites did you use, and what was the rationale for the number of sites? Because anyone's doing clinical trial knows it gets more complex and costly the more sites you bring on.
We did 2 sites, primarily because one site, yeah, it's more efficient, and there's advantages in that, but kind of puts your eggs in one basket. And we were very, very lucky because as we were halfway through the trial, the pandemic hit and things started to get shut down, and we needed that last clinic visit to complete the trial for a lot of people. And this was the early days of virus, right? Like where everything was just shut down. And so we had 2 different cities in 2 different states, and that helped us a lot because one of the cities we were able to get a lot more kind of patients in the door completed before the restrictions really took hold.
Wow.
So that was another wrinkle. That was fun.
How did you, okay, there's a lot of wrinkles to doing study. The reason, Chris, this is a good just the clinical trial guru segment as opposed to the whole thing, because so many of our clients like ask these questions or like they want to do stuff like Dr. Varma has done. So something like technology, like how did you capture the data? Did you use EDC? because these vendors are expensive. I mean, you talk to people in our industry, these vendors are basically enriching themselves while bankrupting the industry. So like how I mean that's the crux of it, right?
Yeah.
Not Viva, my sponsor. I got to throw Viva on there. They're part of the solution. They're free to the sites, but just something simple like EDC. You got to capture it in data system, right? Or did you use paper serum? How did you come around these challenges?
Um, we obviously use kind of up to the date kind of EDC as much as possible, and we were taking like before after images. So there's this Visia machine, which is like a very specialized imaging sort of hardware and software that collects all this. We collect a ton of data. We collect a lot of sequencing data, which is quite expensive to collect, but gives you amazing insight. And then we sequenced it in a very cool way. This company that does a really neat chemical trick that gives you really, really high quality data. So when we were designing the trial, again, back to your point, Dan, right, of that clinical trials are expensive, right? And a lot of people get sticker shock. But
Almost
having said
everybody
that,
we talk to.
exactly. But having said that, right, if you're putting in all this money and all this intention and spending all this time and effort into running a clinical trial because you want these urgent questions answered, you want to make sure you design the best clinical trial. And the temptation sometimes is to cram every possible thing, right? You want to have 6 arms, 7 arms. Okay, how many people are you recruiting? Oh, just about 200. Well, think about what that turns out as people per arm. You're not going to get any definitive signal over noise, right? So thinking that through, powering things, and we had great advisors. We continue to have great sort of dermatology, scientific, kind of clinical advisors who really helped us to design a solid trial. There were a lot of questions we wanted to ask, but we knew we couldn't get them all answered in one shot. So we took the most important ones, put them at the top, and that's what we ran the clinical trial on. And then having all the data and then collating the data. So getting it all integrated, everything from clinical observations to patient diaries to microbiome sequencing to
You
before
use
after.
patient diaries
Yeah, I
and
mean
you
it was
kept
a
this
one
on a
shot.
budget?
Mhm.
Wow. You're like everybody's hero at this point who's watching this. This guy, Dr. Varma, used all the tools. So what can you talk numbers or if you're not comfortable, it's okay. But for the inside baseball people, like what was your
Um,
grant? How much did this cost you?
so it came to about I would say about $1,500 per patient. I'd say $1,500 to $1,800 per patient.
So times 90. Well, let's do times 100.
Yeah.
15,000. 150,000 a patient?
No.
Oh,
150,000 total.
150. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. 150K total.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, is that about consistent with what we tell? I mean, this is for a OTC consumer study, like not an IND trial.
Yeah, this is going to be
Yeah.
a little less expensive study than our
Oh, much
typ-
less. Yeah.
typical sponsored trial.
Yeah.
Much less, yeah. Wow. And you're able. So it took the actual study itself is 8 weeks.
hmm
But what was the enrollment window to get the 90? How much time did that take to get the
Let's see. We had first patient in late 2019. It was probably about 6, 7 months to get everyone enrolled.
wow.
Yeah.
And did most of the were you able to I'm assuming from the 1500 a patient, you were able to pay the dermatologist something from that, the people doing the two sites doing the study, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not a good budget for them necessarily. So how did you convince them to do it?
No, so I mean, I think the economics of running a consumer trial versus an FDA trial are completely different. I mean,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be. It would be at least an order of magnitude higher for an FDA trial, if not
Oh,
more.
easily, yeah.
Um, and that's why I'm saying that even like to spend 150, I remember our investors were like, "Well, do you really have to do this? Is this the best use of your capital?" And I was just like, "Just wait for it. Like, we need to do this because it's fundamental to our business, our science, our approach to acne." if we don't have this proof, we can't just, at least I wasn't prepared to launch this product based on, a few good reviews from friends and family who tried it. I needed to
Mm.
show that this was kind of scientifically, we had the hard data behind this. 150K, 180K pays for a lot. And so putting it all into trial is definitely a significant allocation of capital.
Did it pay
But
for IRB, informed consent, all
yeah,
that stuff?
yeah. So it was
How
yeah.
did you find the IRB? Like, what did what did you do to? They're sometimes hard to get a hold of.
No, I mean, so you like, we picked an outfit that had an IRB approval sort of process that was baked into the trial design.
Oh, I
And so
see.
they just took care of it. They just kind of review IRBs like every week. So it was also fast because
Also, the sites were using a local IRB, their own IRBs.
yeah. And that's, that you can arrange that.
I think, Chris, that's the cheaper route. You got to find the
Mhm.
sites that already have a local IRB, so you don't have to worry about that. Because these central IRBs, Dr. Varma, let me tell you,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
not their
yeah.
biggest fan.
time's a big factor in that equation, right? Local IRBs, individual sites with all their own local IRBs can really delay startup and other activities. So it's a give and take, right? There's positives and negatives to both situations.
Yeah,
What
you
about
certainly have to find your kind of ideal checklist, right?
what about
Hmm.
labs? Did you have to do safety assessments? Um, did you use a central lab, or did the sites use a local labs?
Yeah, so we used a third party lab to do all the safety assessments, and you know, um, we got all that sorted before we started the trial. It was a requirement, right, from the IRB side, and also something that like was non-negotiable for us because we want to make sure that it's a new technology. It's something no one else has done before. We're not
Hmm.
just picking up like a benzoyl peroxide, selling the same stuff in a different bottle. We were doing something completely new, so that was important.
And then the other costs are like, I mean, I know it wasn't an FDA submitted trial, but so you didn't need a clinical study report, but did you have data managers? You had a database, so did you have data managers, biostats? Did you have a report at the end, or
We had data managers, and we did get they did generate a report at the end, and that was all part of kind of the output.
wow, you
Um,
hire them yourself or you outsource them or how?
n- uh, for the trial report, again, that was part of the clinical trial group. So the CRO actually, that was their output. We
Well,
were
you
like,
had a CRO. Oh my gosh,
yeah, yeah.
Dr. Varm, this is impressive because I just assumed you didn't need a CRO, so you're not going to have one. So you hired a CRO.
Oh yeah, 100%. So the CRO took care of everything. Like,
Whoa,
we collaborated with them on the trial design. They did the IRB for us. They set up and ran the trial at two sites. Collected
wow.
you know they
It
took
couldn't have been
pictures. They
IQVIA
ran the
or one of the.
diaries. They
Wow.
they had the IGA scoring. So basically, you come in at the clinic visit. You come in, and you have a dermatologist grading their skin, and they generate a quantitative score from 1 to 4, and that's called the IGA score. Which
IGA, yeah.
4 is really severe acne, 1 is like almost no acne, 0 is like perfectly clear skin. Um, then they had the Visia imaging, which was done under like regular light, polarized light, couple of other kinds of filters, UV light. We had all that data,
So you
and
did the
then
whole shebang.
yeah, we got a lot
But
done.
this CRO has to be someone like DSCS, right? It can't be IQVIA, PPD, Senios. I mean, who was? Are you comfortable mentioning their name?
Uh, I'm comfortable. I'm not sure how comfortable they'd be,
Okay, okay.
but
But they're small. I'm assuming they're a small CRO.
yeah, they're small. Yeah, they're not huge. I'd
Okay,
say they're
okay.
mid size.
And
But
how'd you
again,
find them?
they specialize in a lot of derm stuff too. So they're specialized derm CROs who kind of did that
Does
really
their name start with a C, the letter C?
well.
Okay, then it's not who I know. Okay, wow. And you just found them. Like, how did you find them? You knew somebody there, or
Through our network, we knew other companies, and through our advisors and our other startups that were running
wow.
in the space. Yeah.
So they monitored it. They had a CRA and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of, limit. So, for example, in terms of clinic visits, we had three clinic visits, at 0, 4, and 8 weeks. At 0 and 8 weeks, we collected like full bore, right? So you're doing microbiome sequencing and everything. At 4 weeks, we didn't do microbiome sequencing, but we did have them take before after pictures. So we had all that data. We had diaries throughout. We had, whatever, compliance checks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That is great budget, Dr. Pharma. All this stuff, including microbiome sequencing for like 1800 a patient.
Hmm.
Chris, this is amazing. Are you like this is we there's going to be so many people. Dr. Varma's LinkedIn will be underneath this video and in the show notes. So those couldn't have been the initial estimates for the price per patient, right? Did you negotiate that down like quite a bit?
Mm, from when we started, which was looking at like a phase 1 or phase 1B, to where we ended up, we were very happy.
Order of magnitude less?
From, yeah, more than 2 million down to like 150, 180. It was just crazy.
You're
We
going to
did
be a lot of
negotiate
people's
a couple of
hero
things.
watching this.
And like I said, ideally, if I was running my ideal trial, I'd have people doing clinic visits every week for 3 months. I'd be following them after they stop using the product for 6 months, right? We all have our ideal clinical trial design, which is wildly out, like, just it's just too much, right? So then you make the hard choices. You pick and choose. You're like, okay, which is the question that I really, really want answered, and how do we go about finding the best way to answer it? And so hard choices were made, and we worked with our CRO to figure out, oh, do we really, really want this? Because this will cost, this is the sticker price on that. And if you take that away and maybe add something else that's smaller, it'll actually help you answer that question or something even more
Mhm.
important. So
So for over the counter consumer product, does the FDA even need anything? Like, did you even need to do this?
no, we didn't. And almost, this is where we're in the outliers. Like, we did a lot of stuff and continue to do a lot of stuff that no other company does. Uh, and it doesn't deter us or stop us. It's just who we are, and we know that. For us, like I said, it was really important. Even as our investors were saying, "Hey, do you really need to run this trial?" We were just steadfast because we knew that this is something that has to be done, because the science is kind of our strongest suit. And with this new technology, if we don't figure this out, no one is going to have these answers. And we want to have hard data, not just nice reviews from 90% of our customers, which is great, which is what
Mm.
builds a business. But from a scientific point of the view, you need to have hard data. You need to have you know numbers with error bars around them that are substantial enough, because you've done this in enough people.
Mhm. So I'm guessing as we wrap up, the you probably had some investors saying, "Hey, Dr. Varma, you don't need all this. Why are we even doing this?" I'm guessing you said, "Look, we're we need to treat ourselves like a therapeutic company, like a biotech, and even though this particular product is not going IND, what
Hmm.
I'm actually building is a platform to where we can eventually take something that way." So, was it more just to get in the habit of doing it, or
Hmm.
because you like to do it? Because it's still a lot of money. I mean, you negotiate down a lot, but am
Yeah.
I on the right track?
No, you're 100% right. That's exactly right. Because to me, the implications and the potential of this technology is huge. Acne for us, we don't consider ourselves an acne company. For us, acne is a first and most important step in a journey that we hope will transform human health, because we want to
So,
change the way we treat chronic bacterial diseases, whether it's of the skin, your acne or eczema, of the oral health, right, cavities, gingivitis, etc., or gut health, ultimately IBS, Crohn's, etc. We're building a technology platform and a framework, infrastructure, where people can go to. A lot of us feel out of sorts. I would say 90% of our kind of niggles and things that were like, oh, I'm feeling a little sore here, or I'm just like not feeling myself. That's 90% of our health kind of concerns, but we never go to see a doctor for it. Not until your arm's falling off and your knee is on fire, right? And you're hobbling into the ER. And from my point of view, that is just not a definition of health. That's how we should treat our body. And that's unfortunately how, among other things, our healthcare systems drives us to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what if there was a way in which you could interrogate your own health, get, really actionable data and say, oh, you have some gut issues. We looked at your gut microbiome. This stuff is out of balance. This stuff is in balance. So we're going to give you something to just push this down, pull that up, right? Kind of like a digital equalizer for your gut.
Dr.
And then
Hazen,
you
are you
track your
listening?
symptoms. And then 6 months later, you can take another gut test and you can say, oh, okay, those levels did go up, but this other level is a little lagging. So we'll push that up. Deterministic, actionable insights that you can then follow up on, not just, oh, here, have some vitamin D. I'm sure this will cure everything, right?
Dr. Varma, you are amazing. You're everyone's hero who has ever dreamed of doing a trial. You're showing them that, I mean, when you started this, did you have a fancy team or it's just you? But can we make this pragmatic for people?
Before I'm sorry, before you answer, just to elaborate on something Dan said there, we talk to probably at least 1 or 2 doctors a month that want to do their own trial. So they're just blown away by the cost. So
Mhm.
Do you think that would be blown away by the cost Dr. Varma gave us?
No, I think that would substantially help their situation, but I still think most would not.
But do you think most would qualify though? Because this is like unique because it's a consumer product.
You're right.
Correct. So it's a completely different product. So I still think they're going to spend double at least, if not quadruple.
At double, they should sign the contract right away, because that
Yeah,
would
right.
be a huge bargain. Yeah, that would be
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Quadruple, right? It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Plus, the trials are complex, so now you have to pay the investigators. But in your case, Dr. Varma, the trials seem very simple because you made it that way, realizing, hey, I have to compromise. So let's take a lot of these assessments out because these poor dermatologists, they're not going to be working for free to do this, right? So you make it as easy as possible for them to do it and for the patients and keep costs down. There's a lot of things that go into play here, but thank you so much for coming on and just giving like us clinical researchers a little bit. Stay tuned though. All right, I'm going to say goodbye to Guru Nation, but stay tuned to continue our conversation for Chris and Dan. But thank you so much. Dr. Varma's link is underneath LinkedIn. You can have people reaching out saying, hey, how do you help? Can you help me do this? You can have a side business now. Feel free to send them back my way. Me and Chris, we deal with them all the time. And
gotta work out a referral code system.
Yeah, we'll work out a little affiliate link. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Varma, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. Take care.
Where you go? What are you doing?
No, back to Chris and Dan's show. I ended it for Guru.
That whole thing was Guru?
Only since I started talking about his study design.
Oh, okay.
Chris and Dan show, you guys see how content is being created because it's Chris and Dan show. But then I'm like, no, this is actually good for Guru. Let's start. Boom, seamlessly. And now you're watching the whole thing if you've stayed for the whole 1 hour, 20 minutes. Back to Chris and Dan show conversation. Dr. Varma, you're an amazing dude, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It's been as I'm sure these clinical trials and just kind of the journey takes a long time. And, I go up and present our clinical data at conferences. And it's all really neat, right? It's like a 7 to 10 slide pack. And you run people through, and it just feels so linear and organic. And you're just like, oh yeah, we asked this question, we got this answer. We asked this question, we got this answer. But it's so difficult. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of like, knowing what to look for. It's you have to be like really good at figuring out what exactly you're asking and very disciplined in like finding the answer to that question. So it's a lot of hard work, and not just for me, but for my team as well. So really proud of that.
Chris, you were saying something?
Well, I just wanted to apologize for political commentary. It's so tough to talk about anything political these days.
But that's what Chris and Dan
Um,
show's for. That's
but
why I brought it up.
I did want to put a link here that you may find very interesting to read. It's a lot of information on the public school system in California. Um, if you'd like to learn more about it,
Mhm.
I know I follow a lot of politics, so I'm very well versed
This,
in,
Dr. Varma,
in
that's why we have
a lot of
that's why
this
we have two
information.
shows. You know, we have my guru one. Chris is often a co-host, and then we have Chris and Dan show where we could be more all over the place. But then
Mhm.
both kind of drive. We haven't even integrated them to drive traffic to each other. We could, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get like this is actually going to go on two different podcasts.
I just want to apologize if I caught you off guard for
Oh yeah,
anything I
no
said.
worries. I follow and enjoy politics too. And I just I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole because obviously it's something that impacts a lot of people, right?
Oh,
Education I
absolutely,
think impacts everyone.
absolutely.
And it's an important conversation to be had. But I wanted you guys to kind of drive the bus, obviously, because it's your show, and
We
I don't want,
appreciate that.
we could have spent 5 hours
Well,
and gone
Just
out.
on that, just
But
on that.
please, well, more than that.
Yeah, oh, 100%. It's really is a conversation of a lifetime because
Yep.
education is kind of, it's not just something for a lifetime, but is changing across generations. And my
Yep.
comment to kind of our spending on education is my comment to our spending on healthcare is we spend a shit ton of money on it and look what we get for it, right?
Seems wasted, right?
Yeah.
We
And
spend more.
again,
I'm sorry, just to elaborate on that point, we spend
yep.
more than most socialized nations that have first payer programs. We
Yes.
spend more per
What Dr.
person.
What Dr. Varma just paid on the actual, he got something out of his clinical trial. Can you imagine UC San Francisco? I mean, I know you went there, so let's pick on someone else. Yale. Okay, can you imagine Yale doing the same study? What it would cost them?
Oh,
The same thing.
yeah. No,
That
So-
that alone, right there. So private
So-
industry is what's going to solve. Small business is what's going to solve our problems.
So, are you trying to say that the public system or is kind of
Yes.
a waste of money?
I think we need to privatize our school system somehow and give maybe government grants or
See,
something.
that's funny. That's what this article goes into. How charter schools deliver much better product at half the cost.
We need
Well-
to incentivize entrepreneurs, but they don't want to do that. They want to make it socialist. So
Yeah.
that's what
Well,
you get.
I mean, I will say though, the countries that are beating us hands down in the education race, they're not spending more money; they're just spending it more smartly. So
Exactly.
whether
Yeah.
whether it's healthcare or education, you look at Finland for their education system, you look at anywhere in Europe, which all have different
Methods.
methods of ensuring public kind of
Yep.
one single payer healthcare system. There is an efficiency. I mean, it's kind of like if you look at the U.S. as a company, as an entity, and it's bargaining for its healthcare. Why wouldn't you have collective bargaining? Why wouldn't you say, oh, we are 330 million people. We're all under a single payer system. Now you tell me how much you want to price your drug. Because if you price it right, then we'll pay, a ton of money for it because we have so many people. But if you don't, you're out of our system. We're not going to give you a cent. And
So
that's
I
what
don't-
all these countries do.
And you're absolutely right. Absolutely, 100% everything you said is correct. The only catch to all of that, though, is, to my understanding, the United States basically pays for R&D for the rest of the world because of our system, right? Where France is negotiating prices for medication where they're paying $1 a pill and we're paying 1,000 a pill, right?
Right.
That's an absolute exaggeration, but it is somewhat true.
So two responses to that. The first is that's not true.
No,
right?
I understand it was an exaggeration, but I know that.
No, but that concept itself is not true because some of the biggest drug companies in the world are Swiss, right? Switzerland has a single payer healthcare system. You can't say that, and the Swiss aren't paying crazy things. The second comment is, why should we be paying for everyone else's R&D?
No, I don't think we
Infuriates
should.
me. That even if this were true, that we take it as some sort of badge of honor. I'm like, wait, why are we the suckers that are paying so much for terrible outcomes? It makes no sense.
I don't disagree with that. To my understanding, though, that is part of the reason we pay more. No,
No. Like I said, Roche owns Genentech. Roche is a Swiss company.
Do they
Roche is a
do?
giant.
do sure.
Bristol Myers Squibb is a British company, right? BMS. My wife works for BMS. She works in Redwood City.
Okay.
Um, there is no Merck is a German company, right? Bayer is a German company.
AstraZeneca, Boehringer.
Yep. So Europe has all these, and they innovate. They innovate across the world, right? They have obviously they're global. They're all global companies. They have outposts in the U.S. They have outposts all around the world, and they run clinical trials globally. But it doesn't stop their countries, their governments, from negotiating single payer thing. Just one of the last, I think it was the Inflation Reduction Act, was the first time that Medicaid was allowed to bargain and set or negotiate directly with drug companies for drugs. Why are we stopping? Why are we paying as taxpayers more out of our pocket to these drug companies that are making record profits than we should? I mean, it makes no sense to me. Are they a charity case? Are we like trying to take care of them? They're the richest companies in the world. They should be paying us for the privilege of doing business with Americans.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that.
Yeah. Um, you know, I've experienced healthcare in a few settings. India is definitely not the kind of ideal. My sister's in Germany, and I see her healthcare, and yeah, we have a lot of work to do. So
Hmm. Um, as we wrap up Chris and Dan show, one of the things we like to do, this is a surprise. We make this little video a link to the whole thing because Wu-Tang Clan had a quote that said the dumb are mostly intrigued by the drum. So it's like a Trojan horse. So you help us, you pick a song that you think we haven't heard and we react to it. Obviously, the shorter, the quicker we could end the podcast, but you could be as long as you want. I mean, we'll sit here all day. If you pick a 2-hour song, we can.
um, have you guys heard? Are you guys fans of Hamilton?
I love Hamilton.
So when I started the company and I would bike down to work, I would listen to Hamilton because I just discovered it. This was 2016.
Love
And
that
Hamilton was
musical.
about a year old, and I would listen to the soundtrack beginning to end all day, every day for months and months. And one of my favorite songs, which I thought was very appropriate for an entrepreneur, was "I'm Not Going to Give Away My Shot."
Okay, let's do that. Thank you. I'm not throwing away my shot.
Yeah.
Chris, you gotta
Prepare,
listen.
right?
You gotta watch. Yeah, I'm not. My shot. It's 5 minutes. Should I find the one with lyrics? 5 minutes. My shot with lyrics. There we go. Wow. Still get. I mean, I've seen this so many times. I still get goosebumps. This dude should win every award that they gave him. Chris, that's your first reaction of this ever. What do you think?
Well, I completely agree with the message. Get, get rid of authority. I mean, too much government's always a problem, in my opinion.
This is amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Pharma. Do you know, Chris, like this? We were talking in the very beginning of this interview about what the United States can do to make learning cool again. I really think it's more things like this, like Lin-Manuel Miranda and how he embeds learning into his show, like culture. Like you infuse that into culture, right? Where it's not just rapping about how many people you shot or how many hoes you have. It's about history. Like
Well, certainly a much better message than most rap songs.
you learn something out of it. Like I think this is how we win back our education. But I think more people like we need to give his flowers to Lynn, while he's still here. Um, that's just my opinion on that. But yeah, it's always good to get a virgin's reaction to this.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of rap songs, it's certainly has like I said, a better message than 95% of rap songs. So you can't beat that.
You've got to watch the whole thing like live. You've got to watch it. All right, fine. You could probably find it on YouTube, but we're not telling you to bootleg, guys. Go buy it yourself. But Chris, find it, watch it. It's what the best hour and a half you'll spend because it's like history
Mhm.
and entertainment. Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Varma. That was great.
Yeah, that was definitely a better rap song than Dan usually puts on.
My favorite song from that musical is King George's solo. I think that's hilarious. That's amazing. That was the one I made Chris react to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Varma, thank you very much. It
Oh
was a
yeah,
pleasure
absolutely.
getting you on.
Lots of great information.
Just wanted to say thank you to you guys. I just had a great conversation. Really appreciated the topics we went through, and it was just great.
Come back, for both podcasts, for mine and for Chris and Dan show. On mine, we could do more nerding about research, and
Hmm.
on Chris and Dan show, we can talk about everything from acne to politics to Hamilton to anything you want. So when we can do both at the same time.
That would be awesome.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Varma.
All right,
Thank
take
you
it
very much
easy,
for
guys.
joining us. You
Have a
too.
good
Have a
one,
good rest
guys.
of the day.
You too. Bye.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.